Hi there, Richard Fulmer here, and welcome to another Richard's Rock Rambles. So today we're going to have a look at one of the true pioneers of heavy metal, in particular British heavy metal. These guys paved the way for so many other bands, not just in the style of music they played, but the whole look and the whole branding of heavy metal changed with these guys. They are still going today, a few lineup changes along the way. But yeah, they're still going strong. And the band I'm talking about is none other than Birmingham's Judas Priest. So they came from the same part of the world as Black Sabbath, but they just took it a little bit further, the whole heavy metal thing. Because Sabbath were almost said they were more of a hard rock band than a metal band. So yeah, we're going to have a look at this band. And what I've done is I've split it into two, because there's quite a long discography. So what I've done is part one, we're going to have a look at the debut album right up till the album British Steel. And then in part two, the next episode, it'll be from British Steel right up until the most recent album, which came out a few years ago. As I say, a few lineup changes. The guys formed in Birmingham in 1969, so they do go back quite a way. Obviously, they were still in their formative years, so they were still touring in the beginning, getting their sound together. And the original lineup, the only guy that's still in the band who was in the original lineup is the bassist Ian Hill. Then you had Rob Halford on vocals. He wasn't actually the original vocalist, but when he came along, it just changed the whole sound of Judas Priest. John Hinch on drums, he was the original drummer, sadly passed away quite recently on the 29th of April this year. So yeah, he was the original drummer. And then of course the twin guitar attack of KK Downing and Glenn Tipton. Two very different styles. Glenn Tipton was the more melodic player, the guy with the intricate lead solos. KK Downing was a slightly wilder kind of guitarist. Lots of whammy bar, screaming guitar sounds, lots of heavy riffs. But they just worked so well together, and they kind of rewrote the book for twin guitar attack. I mean, bands like Wishbone Ash had introduced the whole twin guitar thing for me. Thin Lizzy took it a step further, but these guys were the heavy version of that twin guitar sound. So that was the original lineup. The current lineup is Ian Hill, still there on bass, Scott Travis, the only non-English guy in the band, although I'm not sure I think Andy Sneap on guitars might also be American. I'm not too sure about that. So Scott Travis on drums, Rob Halford on vocals, Richie Faulkner on guitars, who took over from KK Downing, who left the band under a bit of a cloud. He said he wanted to go and do other things, and when the guys reformed, he automatically thought, okay, they're going to ask me back, which they didn't. So there's this whole drama there. Of course, bands always have dramas. And then Andy Sneap on guitars. Over the years, there have been other notable members. You've had Alan Moore on drums. I think he was one of the early drummers. They had a few lineup changes right in the beginning. And the original singer was a guy by the name of Al Atkins. Definitely not in the same league as Rob Halford, but all bands have a starting point and you build up from there. Les Binks on drums. He was with him for quite a few albums. And for me, the best drummer that Priest ever had. He may not be the most powerful drummer they ever had, but he had a lot of little fills and nice little touches which reminded me a lot of Mitch Mitchell from the Jimi Hendrix Experience. A different kind of drummer, maybe even a bit of jazz in his drumming. I always loved his style. And also on drums you had Dave Holland, who passed away on the 16th of January 2018. Unfortunately, Dave Holland also have a cloud over his name. He actually landed up in jail for all sorts of goings on, kicked out of the band, and yeah, he came from the band Trapeze, which of course featured Glenn Hughes. So all these bands sort of knew each other in the scene back in the day on the tours, and so he joined the band from Trapeze, Dave Holland. Their first label was Gull Records. I think that was for their first two albums. And I think after that, they went on to CBS. And that's when things really started to take off. All in all, there are 18 studio albums. So you can see why I've split it into two. 7 live albums And there are a number of live DVDs. I don't have all of them. I have some which I will be showing to you a little later. So what I'm going to do is just quickly go through each album and tell you about the standout tracks and who's in the band, etc. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I mean, this isn't Wikipedia. I'm not here to do a whole history of the band. It's just basically to get you more acquainted with the band and, you know, what they produced and what the sound was like at the time. Like I said, these guys changed the whole look of heavy metal. Right in the beginning, their sound was more, I would say, sort of psychedelic rock, mixed with a bit of blues and maybe a bit of hard rock, but definitely they hadn't yet got to that metal sound, which would they become known for. The look, the leather, the studs. I mean, in the beginning, Rob Halford used to wear these long flowing robes and had quite long hair, so the whole look was very different. I think there's a video of him during that period on YouTube, and I think they were doing the Top of the Pops, which was a big show in the UK, and I think they did one of their tracks on there, and you can see that he looks totally different to what he does today. I mean, obviously today he's a man in his late 60s, mid to late 60s. His guys are all getting on, and he looks totally different today. Excuse me. Right, so let's get cracking into the albums. First album, we go all the way back to 1974 on Gull Records, as I said, and the album was called Rock-a-Roller. When you listen to this album, you can hear that these guys are still finding their feet. I wouldn't say it's a great album. It's of its time. You know, when bands start out, they don't always have an immediate effect. Some bands do, like Led Zeppelin and Van Halen. These guys still had to find their way and their sound. Produced by Roger Bain, who of course was also a producer for Sabbath. So you can see the connections there, Birmingham guys getting to know other Birmingham guys and who produced. So let's have a look at the back here. And you can see that's John Hinch, the original drummer who passed away recently. There's Ian Hill looking very hippie-ish. A very young Rob Halford. There's Glenn Tipton. There's KK Downing. So what do we have on here? We have KK Downing on guitars, Glenn Tipton guitars, synthesizers, and second vocals. So I think later on KK and Glenn would also do vocals. Ian Hill bass guitar, and Bob Halford, not Rob Halford, he was called Bob Halford here, on vocals and harmonica. Actually quite a mean harmonica player as well. All the lead singers from that era, from the early 70s, late 60s, Ian Gillan, Mark Farner, Rob Halford, Ozzy Osbourne, all played harmonica. It was kind of a thing that you did back in the day. And John Hinch on drums. So the tracks on here, One for the Road, sort of a mid-pace rocker, nothing fantastic. That was 4 minutes long. Rock-a-Roller, the title track. By the way, this is the original cover. There is another version of this cover of the first album, which has got sort of a strange creature, science fiction kind of feature. I think this is a much better one, because what they were doing was a sort of play on words, Rock-a-Roller, Coca-Cola, hence the bottle top. Winter, Deep Freeze, Winter Retreat, Cheetah, very psychedelic. And not in any ways is this heavy. I mean, it's hard rock at most, but it's not heavy metal. Never Satisfied, Caviar and Meths, that's quite a cool track, and Dying to Meet You. Recorded at Olympic, Trident and Island Studios in London during June-July 1974. I'm actually glad I have this debut, because it's nice to see how bands start out and how they progress through the years and how their look changes and their sound changes. And I must say, on vinyl, it sounds really cool. So then we move on to their second album, and this would be a big step up for the band. You could hear they're starting to find their songwriting. Rob Halford really comes into his own on this album. He can sing the high stuff, he could sing the low stuff. He had such a range. And he was a great frontman. Even back then, he could engage the audience, grab the audience and not let go. And you would see over the years how he progressed with that. And the twin guitar attack was also starting to come into its own with this album. So I'm talking about Sad Wings of Destiny. I just love that cover. Really cool stuff. Very sort of sword and sorcery kind of cover. And some of these tracks would be played right up until today if they play live. So here you had KK Downing on guitars, Glenn Tipton on guitars and piano, Rob Halford on vocals, Ian Hill bass guitar, Alan Moore on drums. So Alan Moore was actually after John Hench. I apologize. And this was produced by Jeffrey Calvert, Max West and Judas Priest. Recorded at Rockville and Morgan Studios. And yeah, so this came out in 1976. So 2 years after the debut, they came out with this bad boy right here. If you can see, there's a picture of the guys live. Rob Halford in the middle there doing his thing. Ian Hill and Alan Moore, and there's Glenn Tipton down the bottom there. And you can't really see it here, but you can see at the back of this, Rob's wearing his flowing robes. Very different look. Prelude, which is kind of like a moody beginning to the album, straight into Tyrant. Great vocals from Rob Halford, as I said. Amazing guitar work. Genocide, which is quite a heavy track. Epitaph, beautiful. You know, when you think of a metal band, you don't think about melody and sort of ballad, but these guys were just brilliant at everything that they did back in the day. Long before the heavy stuff, there was a lot of light and shade on these early albums, especially this one. Island of Domination, and track 2 and side 2 on the original album starts off with Victim of Changes. I mean, come on, you don't get a better track than that as far as Priest goes. You have to play that, or they have to play that when they go live. It's a song with about 4 different parts. Starts off very slow, and it just builds and builds and builds. You know, it's like a Stairway to Heaven kind of track. A lot of different time changes. Amazing guitar work from both Tipton and Downing. And Rob Halford's voice on here is just amazing. The high notes that he could get in the early days is quite scary. Then after that we had another big another big hit called Ripper, a song about Jack the Ripper. Hey, why not? Dreamer, Deceiver, and then into Deceiver. So it's a sort of a segues, the one song segues into the other. Very cool album. If you're not too familiar with the early stuff of Judas Priest, maybe skip the debut, but definitely Sad Wings of Destiny is an album you have to get. So that was from 1976. Then we move on to the third album, and here they had a stand-in drum. They didn't actually have a drummer at the time. Alan Moore had left, so they needed a drummer for the album, and they got none other than Simon Phillips. Now, of course, Simon Phillips at that stage was a great session drummer. I mean, he's drummed with everybody. Stanley Clarke, of course, he was a drummer for Toto for 10 years. Jeff Beck, I mean, you name it. Simon Phillips has been on people's, Michael Schenker, he's been with everybody. So he stood in on this album, and he does an amazing job. Really great production. And this album was produced by none other than Roger Glover, of course, from Deep Purple. So as I said, everybody knows everybody else back in the day. And this was recorded at Rampart Studios in Battersea. And Judas Priest, they had Glenn Tipton, guitars, Rob Halford vocals, KK Downing guitars, Ian Hill bass guitar. Special thanks to Simon Phillips, drums and percussion. A really nice drummer. I've always enjoyed his stuff. I mean, he can handle anything, metal to rock to jazz. And you also had some great standout tracks on here. Sinner, Diamonds and Rust, one of the few covers that Priest had done, and that was a Joan Baez track. And I've got to say, I'm not a massive Joan Baez fan, and the version on this album, so I don't know if I've shown you the cover yet, really cool cover, Sin After Sin, that's the name of the album, and that's the back. So yeah, they covered Diamonds and Rust, really cool version on here. Starbreaker, slightly more up-tempo. Last Rose of Summer, another very almost ballad type song with Rob Halford doing some amazing vocals. Let Us Pray, Call for the Priest, Here Come the Tears, another slow brooding track, and a really, really excellent angry brooding track called Dissident Aggressor. I mean, you can hear by the title of the track what it's all about. Excellent track, and probably the standout track on this album. Sin After Sin, another one worth checking out. Then we move on to the last three that I want to talk about. We're building our way up to British Steel. The next one they did was from I think this was 77, 78. Stained Class. Another great cover there. Always had interesting covers, these guys. So here, this is the Sony remastered one, so there's a couple of bonus tracks on here. Fire Burns Below and Better By You, Better Than Me live. And of course that was another cover they did. And that's, there we go, there's the cover. I think I've shown you. Let me see if there's anything else I can show you inside. Better By You, Better Than Me, I think was a Fleetwood Mac track that they covered. So there's a picture of the guys, strange outfits they wore back in the day. You see the leather and studs thing hadn't yet happened. So there's Les Binks on drums, Ian Hill, Glenn Tipton, Rob Halford there looking very dapper, and KK Downing. So what do we have on here? And let's see if there's anything else I can show you. There's not really any other photographs, but the tracks are brilliant. Exciter, where Rob Halford's vocals just go into the stratosphere. It's you know, that track just doesn't get old. When you listen to that today and you think to yourself, how the hell did he get those notes? And he pulled it off live too. You know, a lot of guys, you can get away with stuff in the studio, trickery and what have you. But when you go live, that's the acid test, and Rob Halford delivers each and every time. White Heat, Red Hot, Better By You, Better Than Me, that Fleetwood Mac cover. Stained Class, Invader, Saints in Hell, excellent track. Really angry stuff. There's some really vicious tracks on here. Savage, that's another one with some amazing riffs. This is where you could see they were getting a lot heavier, and you could see the direction that they wanted to go in. Beyond the Realms of Death, is there a better Priest track? For me, it's probably one of my top 5 Judas Priest tracks. Another one which has got different parts to it. Very prog-like, some of the stuff that they did in the early albums. Amazing vocals as usual. Brilliant guitar breaks from both guitarists, lead breaks, and yeah, the band was just firing on all cylinders, and that's a standout track for me. And the last track was Hero's End. Yeah, Better By You, Better Than Me was recorded live during one of our many world tours, so that's one of the bonus tracks you get on here. I mean, these guys toured incessantly. And that was the thing back in the day, before the internet, before you had YouTube and all the rest of it. If you wanted to become known and you wanted people to know about you, you had to tour. So basically what they did back in the day was release an album tour, sometimes 2 or 3 albums within a space of 2 years, which is quite hectic. I don't think there's many bands today who would be able to keep up with the schedules of these guys back in the day. So that was Stained Class, and this is a classy album. Then we move on to an album called Killing Machine or Hellbent for Leather. It had 2 different releases, one in the UK, one in the States. Another interesting cover there. Yeah, I quite enjoy these early album covers of theirs. There's a picture of the guys at the back. Rob Halford here with a beard, which didn't last too long, I don't think. So what do we have on here? Delivering the Goods, another great kick-off track. One of my favorite tracks from this album. Rock Forever, Evening Star, Hellbent for Leather, the title track. Take on the World, Burning Up, another up-tempo track. The Green Manalishi with it, that's the Fleetwood Mac track, the Green Manalishi with the 2-prong crown. I think Better By You, Better Than Me was another band. I must check up on that. It's early morning, I'm slightly confused. I haven't had enough coffee. Killing Machine, Running Wild, Before the Dawn, and Evil Fantasies, which is a song about what you may or may not get up to in the bedroom with your other half. And yeah, interesting lyrics to that. Whips and all sorts of things, and yeah, interesting. Amazing album. Great drumming, great, the rhythm section as well. no matter who was in the band in Priest, whether it was Simon Phillips or Les Binks as it is here, or Dave Holland, always locked in with Ian Hill, a really solid bassist as well. So that was Killing Machine. Then we moved on to I will come to the live album. Let me just mention that now. Unleashed in the East, their first live album. A lot of people say this isn't an exactly live album. There's too much studio trickery. For me, it's a live album and one of the best live metal albums you'll ever hear. So you had a lot of the early stuff on here: Exciter, Running Wild, Sinner, The Ripper, The Green Manalishi, Diamonds and Rust. So they do the few covers on here: Victim of Changes, Genocide, and Tyrant. And this is also a Sony remaster. They've done a really good job with these Sony remasters, I must say. And yeah, there's some great live shots inside of the band. There's Rob Halford with, you can see the look there is changing. There he is with his Harley Davidson, which became a staple of his on stage, one of his live act props. And yeah, there he is doing his thing on the front. So this was their first live album. They've made quite a few. Unleashed in the East, with great vocals on here from Rob Halford. You can hear as good live as in the studio. So then we move on to 1980s British Steel. And this album is where they really get heavy. This would become one of their biggest selling albums, and the ones that followed this would be even bigger. And this is the 30th anniversary deluxe edition. It's a 3-disc set. It's got a DVD of complete album performed live in Florida 2009. So they do the whole of British Steel on stage, which is really cool. And there's a 15-track CD taken from the live show and the original album remastered, and a 20-page booklet. So let me just show you what I've got here. So this is quite an involved thing. It opens up like that. So there you've got the 3 discs. It's very cool. And of course there's a booklet. I'll just find you the booklet. So that was the original album cover, which I thought was one of the best metal covers I've ever seen. Really clever, with a razor blade in the hand. And that was from the 2009 concert, so that's then when they did the whole thing live. There's some more shots. And the DVD of this is really cool. I mean, Rob Halford doesn't run around on stage as much as he used to. I mean, he's getting on. But a great concert nonetheless. And there's KK Downing when he was still with the band. Of course, no longer with them. So British Steel, as I said, was a lot heavier. Great riffs, and some of the tracks on here would become massive for the band. Rapid Fire, the first track. I mean, if you're looking for a fast-paced track to kick off an album, Rapid Fire. It's in your face, it's just pure metal. And then they go into their signature tune for me, Metal Gods, which has just got this bruising riff from KK Downing and Glenn Tipton. Breaking the Law, which was the biggest hit off this album, it had this really cheesy music video. I mean, back in the day, this was pre-MTV or early MTV, and they weren't the best actors in the world, and that's probably one of the cheesiest music videos I've ever seen, playing with cardboard cutout guitars and what have you, and robbing a bank and whatever. But you know, it's what you did back in the day, and you have to take it for the time. So that was the big hit, Breaking the Law. Grinder, another heavy track. United, which is a throwaway track for me, sort of a sing-along thing. You Don't Have to Be Old to Be Wise. Living After Midnight, another huge hit off this album. The Rage, and Steeler. And then you have Red, White and Blue, which is a bonus track on here. Grinder Live. And then the 30th Anniversary Live, which is the accompanying live CD for the DVD. And you have Breaking the Law, Metal Gods, Grinder, United, You Don't Have to Be Old to Be Wise. So it's their whole album. And then they do some of the older tracks like Victim of Changes, Free Will Burning, Diamonds and Rust, and you've got another thing coming. Excellent, excellent album. I think of the early Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny, where they were just finding their feet, and British Steel and Killing Machine are my favorites. Stained Glass as well. I love them all. I'm a great lover of early Priest. I would say more than what they did later, because I found some of their later albums, they became a little bit derivative. They were just doing the same kind of thing. Whereas in the early days, while they were trying to find their sound, they were prepared to, push the envelope a bit and try different things. And that's what I always enjoy. But yeah, definitely from British Steel. The look was there, the leather and studs thing was there, and they were touring incessantly. They had Top of the Pops shows. They were all over the place in all the metal magazines, and things were really starting to happen. And in the second episode, you'll see that it just got even bigger and bigger, and they became massive in the States. Of course, in the States, that was the country that you had to break to make it big. Still is today. And they certainly did. And they kind of paved the way for other metal bands like Maiden, especially with the twin guitar attack. So there we go, Judas Priest. One more thing I forgot to show you. One of the DVDs you can get. There's a series called Classic Albums, where they have the guys talk about the album, how the album was recorded, etc. And they do one for British Steel. Really interesting. You can get hold of this. This is on the Eagle Vision label, and Eagle Vision and Eagle Records, they bring out some great stuff. Yeah, British Steel. It's really interesting to watch this. How the songs came together. They talk to the producer, and yeah, I don't think there's much in the inside to show you. No, but one worth checking out. So there we go, British Steel, ending off our part 1 of Judas Priest, and from the next one onwards, you'll see there's a trajectory where they just became massive headlining act in the States. They did the US Festival in 1983, which was a big concert for them. And so we'll take it from there. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Please, any comments, suggestions or whatever, down below. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And give us a like if you like. Have a good week. Look after yourselves. Take it easy out there. We're having a bit of a third wave here as far as the whole COVID thing goes. So everybody's on lockdown. Everybody's stuck at home. But if you're stuck at home, the easiest thing to do, stick on some music. Think about those guys who aren't playing in clubs and whatever. The bands that, their livelihood has been taken away. It's tough out there. So yeah, best thoughts go out to those guys, all the DJs, all the band members. At the moment, everything is shut down over here, as it is in many parts of the world. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you next time. Cheers.